Well, the dudes, happy Friday. I told you it would be okay. All we had to do was have a little bit of faith and a little bit of patience. And I know we're a long way from feeling like we're out of the woods in price or remotely happy, but I'll take this week over last week or the week before or the week before that any day. So I just wanted to pop in, give you a little Friday summary about 2:45 Eastern here. Corn, December corn closed up 6 3/4, almost 7 cents, 7 whole cents today. Did close above what everyone had been saying was important resistance at that 426 level. If we go that way, it looks like, or if we can maintain some of this strength, a lot of folks are targeting 450 as the next level to the move, but we obviously have, I think like a 436, a 443. Like there are a few other hurdles that we're going to have to jump through before we get super pumped about that. We saw wheat close up 13 cents today. So again, tried to test its recent low, right in that 530, 533 level. 533 is a low today. Finished up that 13 cents at 546 1/4. We saw Kansas City wheat finish up 11 and a half at 529. Spring wheat finished up about 5 at 595. Beans were up 9 1/4. Finished at 10.35 3/4 there. Meal was up about $5, which is odd. And I hadn't even seen anything as to why. And soybean oil was down a little bit. Apparently I have the hiccups now. Crude was mixed. The dollar was lower. For the week here, or just kind of looking at performance in the week for the markets themselves, corn managed to bounce about 20 cents off its low. I think we traded down to 407 on the December board at one point in time. Like I said, we finished here right just about 428. November beans finished about 35 cents off their low. I think we traded down to $10, 10.01 was the low side of things before we saw it rebound. Wheat, of course, the low of the recent move has been that 533 level, so we're about 13 cents off from that. Headline wise, excuse me, not really much of anything that was like big market mover. I do feel like we are starting to see some sentiment shift. And I think I mentioned this last night. Like we went from kind of like, okay, demand's understated or supply's understated, demand's overstated to wait a minute. What if demand is right and supply is overstated? This week we started to hear more in the way of some pollination issues, just some worries over, production as a whole. I talked to a lot of folks here in the Eastern Corn Belt and across the state of Michigan especially. And this isn't last year's crop. I know in the Western Corn Belt, Iowa, and places like that, it looks really good. But even there are some pockets where folks being agronomists who I pay attention to, are starting to say that there may be some issues popping up here or there, with too much moisture in spots causing either some nutrient deficiencies or disease pressure or some of these other things. And so I do think, from an overall sentiment standpoint, we are seeing a bit of a shift. In addition, we're seeing a bit of a cash short squeeze in corn in Brazil and in wheat across the Black Sea and parts of the EU. One of the things that I've talked about here recently is all of the talk of the world end user just kind of waiting for these cheap supplies, betting on the come, if you will, expecting the world farmer to puke supplies. They thought Brazil, the Brazilian farmer would dump millions of metric tons into the market, and that would provide them the ability to ship cheaply into the global market. We saw that happen in 23 though. So like it is based in reality. The last time Brazil had an export book, even remotely close to the size of the one that folks are forecasting for this year, they basically dumped 40 million metric ton into the pipeline in about 3 months time. I mean, it was 10, 12, 15 million metric tons of corn going into the world pipeline. I said 3 months, 5 months time. It was almost 10 million metric tons of corn going into the pipeline each month. And it just basically filled the world's needs for a while. They bought up, they bought in, it was super cheap, and it took away from the U.S.'s export demand. That's not how it's setting up this year at all. Firstly. Secondly, the USDA is already forecasting a really large Brazilian export book, even if the production kind of moves slightly. They've already said, hey, world demand for corn's pretty exceptional. And then we have this issue in the Black Sea where Ukraine's been experiencing a lot of of dryness. They've had spotty heat. Russia's harvest looks like it's smaller. It's part of why you saw the wheat market jump, is because there's a wheat short squeeze, which I think I said too, happening on the physical side. And so things are getting interesting. We're also hearing stories of, China demand possibly showing up. Canada did put a tariff on Chinese steel this week, so it's unlikely you'll see China buy a lot of Canadian canola. They will need to bring in U.S. beans here October through January, no matter what. Even if it is a small amount, they're still going to need some. And the rest of the world wants U.S. beans as well. We did get a little late in the day headline out of Trump that he's going to go ahead and bump up the EU tariffs. He wants them to land around 20% or whatever. I think the outside markets kind of reacted negatively initially to that, but the grain markets didn't blink. Other thing that's influencing grain a little bit is the idea that inflation's coming back into play. We'll be watching the weekend developments with Powell and Trump. They're trying to kind of push him out of that role. They'd like to find someone to come in. Trump said today that interest rates should be closer to 1%. We get 1% interest rates, you're going to have people talking about inflation, especially after that big, beautiful tax bill that we just put through. In addition, there's some talk that they're going to reintroduce some of the Medicaid, like the Medicaid cuts that took place in the tax bill. There's talk that they may introduce a bill to kind of reintroduce or bring that Medicaid support back. I don't know. Either way, we're spending a lot of money. We're going to cut interest rates if Trump has his way. The rest of the world's spending a lot of money. Like, inflation has not been reined in entirely. So hold on to your ass with that one. Otherwise, though, we'll be watching weather. There's some talk of heat and dryness building in. The CPC, National Weather Service, I was just going to pull up that, see if they have their updated. Oh, it wouldn't be. It's too late. They put them out between 3 and 4. So I haven't seen that yet. CPC did say, though, late yesterday in their forecast that we would be expecting much heat, a lot more heat and dryness to come in. To the forecast here, quite a bit of heat in the 18-14 day and some of that other stuff. So we'll be watching that really close. These crops are far from in the bin. And like I said, there's some issues popping up that we have to be paying attention to here. It is looking like you will see some flash drought, for lack of a better term, show up across portions of the Southern Plains, Central Plains, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, places like that. So, yeah, we'll be watching closely, what all happens here as we move ahead. But as always, if you have any questions, let me know. This weekend, check out our YouTube channel, Consus Ag Consulting on YouTube. There's a lot of really good stuff there. Like, I'm not one to toot my own horn, but check it out. Like, spend some time, mostly because I like to ask other people who are smarter than me questions. And so that's what we did this week. We had a conversation with Eduardo Vannin from AgriInvest on Brazil. That's definitely worth its watch. And then we had talked to Seth Meyer and Lance Honig from the USDA yesterday. So definitely, if you have the time, take it, watch them. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a good one.